starting a realistic career mode with Mikel Arteta and Arsenal in FC25 begins with an important decision, whether to use the live starting points or to start from the beginning of the season. Regardless of the choice, the same transfer strategies and squad building principles will apply. As reports suggest that Arsenal are preparing for an unprecedented summer transfer window, with the arrival of new sporting director Andrea Berta adding further credibility to these claims. It's expected that several key players will leave the club, while some high-profile names have been linked with a move to North London. With these changes on the horizon, this is how you can start a realistic Arsenal career mode in FC25 and guide the Gunners into the next phase under Mikel Arteta. So when starting a realistic career mode, it's important to get the on-field antics correct, and that starts off with the tactics that Mikel Arteta uses in real life. And I've gone ahead and already replicated both the 4-3-3 as well as the 4-2-3-1 set of tactics that Arsenal and Arteta have used so far this season, as well as what I expect them to use going forward in the future. So if you would like to successfully implement these tactics, be sure to check out the 2 Arsenal videos that I have created for this season's tactics. Moving on to the Arsenal squad, and I will be addressing various positions of the team under Mikel Arteta, who I think might stay and who I think might go. Of course, I'm not an Arsenal fan, but I have done a lot of research when it comes to preparing for this video. But if you are an Arsenal fan and you might know a little bit more than me, let me know down below in the comment section what your thoughts and opinions are, and we can have an open-ended conversation. Now, taking a look at the 3 goalkeepers that Arsenal currently have on their books, there's Neto, loaned in from Bournemouth for this season. There's David Raya, who of course is the outright number 1, and then there's Karl Hein, who is currently out on loan in Spain. I do think that Karl Hein could come back next season and be a third choice, or maybe even contesting for that second position behind the likes of David Raya. One thing is for sure though, I'm pretty sure that Neto will be going back to Bournemouth, and I don't know what really happens with him. Does he stay at Bournemouth? Does he get sold? But Arsenal have been linked with a move for a certain Spanish goalkeeper currently playing for Espanyol, which we will discuss at a later point in this video. But otherwise, a goalkeeper is a must for this team, just to add a bit more depth and a bit more quality just in behind the likes of David Raya. Moving on to the left back department. Now, there's a running theme that Arteta and Arsenal are obsessed with this position, and they're always looking to add more left backs to the side. And currently, Arsenal have got 5 left backs on their books. They've got Tierney, Zinchenko, Tavares, Calafiori, and of course, Miles Lewis-Skelly. Now, in terms of Miles Lewis-Skelly and Calafiori, I think they are outright safe. I don't see them moving. If anything, I see Miles Lewis-Skelly maybe playing slightly further forward, and a lot of Arsenal fans also share the same idea. Now, of course, I think he's done very well playing as a left back, inverting from that left side, sitting alongside Declan Rice or Thomas Partey at the base of the midfield. I think he's done very well. And the same can be said for Calafiori in the moments that he has featured this season. Of course, he's also been largely injured, which is a bit of a concern. But as for the other 3 left backs, Tavares out on loan currently at Lazio. Now, if I'm not mistaken, there is a buy option or an obligation to buy, maybe. There was talk of a fee after the loan to Italy. So I do see Tavares leaving on a permanent. Zinchenko for me is a bit more 50-50. It depends on if Calafiori or Miles Lewis-Skelly still are positioned as a left back going forward. Of course, Calafiori is also a natural centre back that can be deployed out wide and has featured in that left back department for Arteta this season, as well as Miles Lewis-Skelly. He can play in the midfield. And if that does happen, Zinchenko can also play in the midfield, but his main position in his Premier League lifespan has been at left back, the left side of the defense, looking to patrol up and down, invert into midfield as well, and he does that very well. So I don't really see Zinchenko leaving unless something major happens. Maybe there's a bid that Arsenal just can't refuse, or maybe Andrea Berta doesn't really see Zinchenko having a future at the club. That could be a possibility. Now, a man that is going to definitely be leaving is Kieran Tierney. I think he's going on a free back to Celtic, back to Scotland, of course, and I think that's more or less a done deal. I don't see him staying past the end of the season, and I think he should be sold or, just let go for free. As for the centre backs, there's 3 mainstay centre backs in the team, and that is Gabriel, Saliba, and Kiwior. Now, of course, some people might be saying they obviously need another centre back. We will talk about transfers at a later stage in this video, but there are other players in the team that can also be deployed there. Like I've already mentioned, Calafiori can, be deployed as a left-sided centre back, and of course, Ben White and Tomiyasu and even Jurrien Timber can also play more centrally. So Kiwior, Saliba, and Gabriel, I think that's a very strong trio of options to have in your team. I was up and down with deciding if Kiwior should stay or go. Now, there have been rumors linking him with a move away, and again, I think it's a very similar situation to Zinchenko, where I don't think Arsenal want to sell him, because I do think he is a part of the squad rotation that Arteta has implemented so far, and we will be seeing more of him now that Gabriel is injured. If Arsenal get an outstanding bid, I don't know how much they paid for him, I think it was like 20-25 million. If they get roughly that amount for him, I think that they might look to try and sell the Polish international centre-back and maybe reinvest that in somebody else. So I did just mention the likes of Ben White, Tomiyasu and Timber, and those are the 3 right-backs on the books for Arsenal. Tomiyasu can be deployed anywhere across the back line. The same can be said for Timber, whereas Ben White is more so a right-sided centre-back that can also play as a right-back and has a shout to be the best Premier League right-back going forward, especially with the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold moving away to Real Madrid, potentially. Nothing's been confirmed just yet. But as for Ben White, Tomiyasu and Timber, I don't see any of them leaving. I do know that a certain group of Arsenal fans have said maybe selling Tomiyasu might be the best option as he is consistently injured. He hasn't had the best, track record when it comes to staying fit. But I just don't see Arsenal moving him out just yet. Maybe that could be a move later on down the line where Arsenal don't necessarily need to rely on him. But again, with a player like this who can play across the entire back line, whether it's centrally or out wide on either flank, it is a valuable player to potentially have in your team. Now moving on into the midfield, and we'll start off at the base with the likes of Jorginho, Partey and Rice. Of course, I don't see Rice going anywhere, but Partey and Jorginho heavily linked with a move away, both leaving on a free. Arsenal haven't offered them any contracts. Jorginho, for example, I think he's potentially angling for a move either back to Italy or back to Brazil. If I'm not mistaken, Flamengo were in talks to try and sign the Italian international. And of course, then there's, the likes of Thomas Partey, who hasn't been offered a new contract, although he has been arguably Arsenal's most consistent midfielder this season. I just see the club looking to move on from him and look to maybe sign 1 or 2 players that could successfully come in and replace both the likes of Jorginho as well as Thomas Partey. And then you've got the likes of Declan Rice, who can play as a 6 or as an 8, and that is something that Arteta will have to nail down. What is his actual position? Is he going to be playing more of an 8, or is he going to be playing at the base of the midfield? I don't really know right now what the best position is for Rice. I more so see him as a defensive midfielder, but he has also done quite well in that number 8 role. So depending on how Arteta sees him going forward, and that does affect the potential transfers that do come in the door, we will have to see. And of course, you guys can let me know down below, what is Declan Rice's best position? And then there's Odegaard and Mikel Merino. Both of these players are essential in trying to link the deeper midfield to the rest of the attack, playing that pivotal role in those 2 number 8 positions. Odegaard being the creative flair, with Merino being that box-to-box presence that can carry the ball over large distances, and even recently being deployed as a striker that looks to drop into the midfield, especially with, Jesus and Havertz both being out injured. Now, what I would suggest is Arsenal do look to make at least one other central midfield signing. Havertz can also play there. It's a very fluid system that Arteta has come up with, where various players don't necessarily need to be nailed to certain positions. They can all more or less rotate amongst themselves. But effectively, I would say and suggest there is Declan Rice, there is Odegaard, and there is Merino. But getting one more player to successfully add into that mix could also be very good for the Arsenal squad. And then there's the 3 lone players that I think don't have a future at Arsenal, and that is Sambi Lokonga, Vieira, and of course Reece Nelson. All 3 of these players should come back to the club at the end of the season and then get sold for a definite amount of money that you can look to reinvest back into the team. Maybe it's looking to address the striker position, bringing in a world-class striker that the team and Arteta desperately do need, or possibly looking to bring in a central midfielder with the amount of money that you might look to get from these 3 players. And then there's Raheem Sterling, a player loaned in from Chelsea in the summer, not really used as much as what he should have been, but also he hasn't been good enough when he's been used. I can count on one hand the amount of good games he's had, and it wouldn't even fill up the full hand. So I think Sterling goes back to Chelsea, and that's that. I don't see him staying. Of course, a lot of Arsenal fans have hated this move from the get-go, and he's barely done anything to really warrant him being in this Arsenal side. Along with Sterling possibly heading out the door could be the likes of Leandro Trossard. Hasn't really been happy with his role at the club, used off the bench quite a lot when, of course, Arsenal have been fit and firing, and when called upon in the time of need where Arsenal have had a lot of injuries, he hasn't really ticked the boxes of being that clinical finisher from the left wing or even through the middle. So possibly Trossard does leave. He is getting up there in age now, 30 turning 31, or it could be turning 32, and I do see him maybe moving away from North London and possibly a better player coming in to fill that position. And then to round off the squad, there's Martinelli, Saka, Ethan Nwaneri, Jesus, and of course Havertz. All 5 of these players I don't see leaving for various different reasons. Havertz is the striker that can also be deployed in midfield and adds a bit more depth to both positions, and maybe with a new striker coming in, he can play that fluid role, looking to play in that number 8 position or rotate with the number 9 up front. As for Jesus, I'm pretty sure that if he wasn't injured, Arsenal would be looking to get rid of him in the summer, but because he is, that's a 9-month injury with the ACL tear, I don't think it gives Arsenal much room to try and sell him and then have him pass medicals with the other club. So I do see Jesus staying for at least one more season, and then maybe in the next year you might see Arsenal try and get rid of the Brazilian striker. But of course he does offer a lot of rotation. He can play across the entire front line, right wing, left wing, and of course through the middle, or even maybe depending on how Arsenal might look to shape up, they could change their formation. I think he could also play in that number 10 position. And then there's the three young wingers being Ethan Nwaneri, Bukayo Saka, and Gabriel Martinelli. Now for the Brazilian's future, I do see him possibly being a rotational player off the bench, looking to be that spark plug for Arsenal when he comes on and have that work rate to track back and defend, but also break forward and attack the opposition's slightly more tired fullback when he does, enter the field. As for Saka and Nwaneri, I don't see them going anywhere. I really don't. I think their long-term futures are in North London, and something drastic would have to happen for Arsenal to consider selling both of these players or one of these players. Maybe they've run down a contract, maybe they don't want to extend, or maybe they just want to leave. And that does bring me on to my next point. Andrea Berta has just walked in the door, and his number one priority will be to re-sign the likes of Bukayo Saka and Saliba to long-term deals, making sure that they are cemented as the cornerstones to this Arsenal project. And I mean, there were reports a few weeks ago that Saliba had been offered a new deal, as well as reports stating that he was heavily considering signing the dotted line. So that could definitely be a massive ploy for Arsenal and Andrea Berta going forward, and even Mikel Arteta. The same could be said for Saka. I don't know anything about his contract situation, but I do think that he would want to extend with the club going forward. Moving on to the youth academy, and I'll always try and incorporate this into my videos, as I do think that with a club like Arsenal, having a youth academy that is producing good young talent is a vital component to the success of a realistic career mode. And especially in real life, where Arsenal do have a lot of young talents that will be coming through over the next few years that could potentially be generational talents. We've already seen Nwaneri and Marcel Skelly come through, but there are other players like Max Dowman, the young attacking English midfielder, that could play a major role in this overall Arsenal project, possibly being the successor to the likes of, Martin Odegaard, the current club captain. Now, I have gone and scouted in two key areas in the world, two places that Arsenal have in the past scouted and found fantastic talents in. One being England, where I've set up a 9-month scouting project looking for a centre-back, a defensive midfielder, a right wing, and of course a left wing. And if you would like to, you could also look for the next Max Dowman, who could be the attacking midfielder that can really and truly unlock this Arsenal and Arteta system. The other area that I have gone and looked at is in Brazil. Under Edu, the Brazil scouting was a lot better, and I don't think that Arsenal would have wasted all that money and time and effort just for Edu. I think that they would have set up these, scouting networks, looked to try and find and incorporate talents like Gabriel Martinelli, and of course there was Marquinhos at one point. But I don't think that now that Edu's left and, Andrea Berta's in, that they're just going to scrap the Brazil project. I think that they will still continue scouting in Brazil, and that's why I've gone and looked for a right back, a left back, a central midfielder, and of course an attacking midfielder. As for the third, potential area that you could go and scout in, that can be totally up to you, or if you might know of another youth scouting network that Arsenal have currently set up, let me know down below in the comment section, and I will pin that comment as the top comment for other people to potentially go on and see. So before I get on to the transfers that Arsenal could look to make in the summer, I thought it was worth noting that Andrea Berta has a fantastic track record of signing free players for his previous club, Atlético Madrid. So I would suggest you go and set up your scouting network to try and find players in the last year or so of their deals, looking to try and, ease the financial strain on Arsenal, maybe looking to bring in a player like a Leroy Sané or a Jonathan David, who are in the final few months of their deals and can be signed on pre-contracts, effectively signing them for free. And then finally, we'll round off the video by discussing the potential transfers that Arsenal could look to bring in over the summer window. Now, these are players that have been linked with a move to North London, as well as other players that I just think could fit in perfectly to Mikel Arteta's system. So we'll start off with the two goalkeeper options that I have put down, the one being Tenas and the other one being Joan Garcia. Now, in terms of Tenas, I just think that he could be a fantastic backup for Arsenal and Arteta. There's been no major links linking him with the move to the club, but I do think that because he is a Barcelona youth prospect and he knows how to play from the back, he knows how to distribute the ball quite effectively, I just think that he could be a great alternative option to the more realistic option of Joan Garcia, who the move didn't materialize with last summer, but apparently there have been reports that have come out that have stated that, Arteta and the coaching staff have stayed in contact with Joan Garcia over the season, and he has had a decent season in La Liga with Espanyol, and they still are going to try and sign him in the summer, so that could still materialize going forward. Now, before I get onto the midfield and further forward, I would just like to say I've put down no defenders on this list. I don't think Arsenal need to go and sign a defender, although although I don't think that that would actually happen. I think we might see a player like a Jarrell Hatto coming in, a potential Diamande from Sporting CP, walking through the door at some point just to add a bit more depth and quality to the backline, especially if various players like Kiwior or Zinchenko or, Nuno Tavares and so on leave. But nonetheless, Martin Zubimendi, there were reports that came out in the January window that Arsenal are looking to move for him, and they've probably secured the deal for the Spaniard from Real Sociedad. I did make a video on how he would fit into the team, so if you would like to see that, be sure to check it out after this one. I think it could be a really, really good fit, which would effectively see the likes of Declan Rice mainly playing as a number 8 going forward. But Martin Zubimendi is on the list as the defensive midfielder, as he more so is nailed on to possibly make that move to North London, although I have to say it, Real Madrid have also been linked with the move recently for the Spanish number 6. So there could be a lot of competition for the signing of the defensive midfielder. Now, I do have a few wingers on this list, Semenyo and Sane being 2 of them as right midfielders, but I would say if you do sign them, you would have to convert them to left midfielders. Sane can play as a number 10 as well as a left or a right midfielder, which is perfect for what Arteta would want, as a natural backup for Saka or Wanyeri, or deployed as that left winger to start games. And then of course the same can be said for Semenyo, who can also be deployed up front. A more fluid role for him, playing across the entire front line, but I think that both of these players would be fantastic additions to the side. So as for the number 8 position, I have got down 6 players that could definitely fulfill that role and also have the fluidity to move between the 6 and the 8 position. So we'll start off with Fabian Ruiz, who had a fantastic Euros last summer, and Arsenal were closely monitoring him before they made the move for the likes of Mikel Merino. And there were reports stating that Luis Enrique has kind of fallen out with Ruiz, although this season we've seen him be deployed quite a lot and play a lot of games and be an integral part to PSG's success. But he is 28. He is getting up there in age. Maybe PSG might look to move him out, and possibly that could be a market opportunity for Arsenal to try and exploit. As for Douglas Luiz, he made the move from Aston Villa to Juventus. It hasn't worked out in Italy whatsoever. It's actually been really sad to see the injuries that he sustained, the lack of game time, and when he has played, he hasn't played very well. Now, before he made that move, Arsenal were heavily linked with a move for the Brazilian. And of course, he's a fantastic corner kick taker, which is perfect for Arsenal and Arteta. So I do see that they could look to assess and bring him back to the Premier League and of course into the Arsenal kit. And that could be a good move. Can play as a number 6, can play as a number 8, more so a number 8 than a 6, but he can be deployed in that double pivot if they do switch to a 4-2-3-1 or something along those lines. And I do think it could work out quite nicely. Now, a player who I think Arsenal would absolutely love, although I think it would cost a lot of money to get him, would be Reinders from AC Milan. He has got an insane engine on him, and that is exactly what Arsenal and Arteta love. Though more so Arteta than Arsenal, but that is exactly the type of mold and midfield that Arteta does want and require in his midfield. He could be an option along with Edison, who is almost identical to Reinders in terms of that engine, that work rate, the attacking ability, the defensive, nous to be able to float into those key areas and set possession and then start that quick transition attack. So these are 2 players that I think could also be fantastic options. 25 and 26, so they're entering the prime of their careers. And then there's Agome. He hasn't been heavily linked with a move to North London, but he has had a few loose paper trail type links to Arsenal. And I also saw a video the other day where they were talking about Agome and Thomas Partey and how he could be the natural replacement, a slightly cheaper replacement for the Ghanaian central defensive midfielder. Now, essentially, Agome can play as a 6 or as a number 8. Like I've already mentioned, there are a few players that can fulfill that role that are on this list. And I think he could be a good alternative, but also cheaper option, especially if you are looking to drop a lot of your money on players that are slightly further forward and more so in the attacking line. Another player that Andrea Berta could target in Spain could be Pupuelu, a key player for Valencia. And again, he is very good when it comes to set piece delivery, whether it's a corner or a deep free kick. He's got the ability to whip in those floating balls to the back post, the near post. He's very accurate with his crossing abilities. And again, he could play as a number 8 or possibly as a number 6. A few other winger options that you could consider for this Arsenal realistic career mode could be the likes of Mohamed Kudus, who Arsenal have been loosely linked with in the past, as well as Ben Seguir. I just think that he could be a possible cheaper alternative, but a very good one nonetheless. Then there's Kenan Yildiz, who has been linked with a move to my club, Manchester United, but I think that Arsenal will also be looking to assess that situation. If there is a deal to be made, I think that Andrea Berta would probably go in and try and make that move, because Yildiz has proven to be a fantastic talent, a rising star. He's done very well for Juventus, although this season he hasn't done as well as what he did the previous season, but I think he might have something about him, although are Arsenal looking to buy developmental players? That is also something that you would have to consider. But someone like Alex Baena or potentially Nico Williams are 2 players that I think could definitely come in, fit in various different roles or positions, and add and elevate more so elevate the team's attacking outlets, especially from that left wing or possibly the central areas in Alex Bayer's case. He can play as a striker or even as a central midfielder. For Neco Williams, I just think that he is better, or sorry, did I say Neco? I meant Nico Williams. I think that he is just a better option. He is the best option on this list, and of course he was linked with a massive move to Arsenal under Arteta last season. So I think that with Andrea Berta coming from Atletico Madrid, he might know something about Nico Williams that could definitely get that deal over the line. And then there's Matheus Cunha as well as Brian Mbeumo, two players that can also play up front as a striker or out wide as a winger. In Cunha's case as a left winger, and in Mbeumo's case it could be as that right winger. I don't really see Mbeumo materializing for Arsenal though, but I have put him on the list because I have seen reports linking him with a move to the club, of course. But Cunha is a very interesting deal because that would mean he could play as that left number 8 or that right number 8, but more attacking, more so as a secondary striker. And if Arsenal are looking to play with that 4-3-3 formation or that 4-4-2, he could play up front as the strike duo, or he could play out wide and look to drift inside and invert a bit more and whip in shots and create opportunities. So Cunha is a very interesting deal for various different Premier League clubs. It could be Arsenal, it could be Liverpool, it could be Man United, it could be Chelsea. Who knows? Chelsea are always in and around, quietly moving and just sniping deals out of nowhere. So Cunha definitely will be leaving. Does he make the move to Arsenal? I don't know just yet, but it could be a very intriguing move if he does, for the right price, of course. And then there is the striker, the position that people have been saying for the last 2 years Arsenal desperately need to fill. They tried to do it 2 years ago. They signed Kai Havertz. His first season wasn't the worst, but it didn't fill a lot of people with the confidence to say he is the striker, even after that season. And then this season, he didn't have the worst season, but of course, injuries and inconsistency and so on. It has made people, and I think the club, realize that they desperately do need an out-and-out striker. Now, Victor Gyökeres, there was a report from David Ornstein the other day that came out and said, Arsenal are heavily considering signing the Swede, and I think that would be a great move. I think that would be the best move. I think someone like Alexander Isak doesn't really play the way that Arteta wants at times. He is more of a player that you would look to hit the ball in behind and have him run onto. Now, Gyökeres can also do that, but I think Gyökeres' link-up play and hold-up play as well is a bit better than Isak. So that's why I don't actually have Isak on this list. Shocker. But I think Gyökeres could be the number one guy that they should be targeting, and effectively that this move could win them the Premier League, just in my opinion. Other options to consider is Benjamin Sesko. Arsenal have also been linked with a move for him for what seems like the last 5 years, although I think it's realistically like the last 2 years. He's 21. He's been a bit more consistent over the last 2 seasons with his goal output. I think 18 goals 2 years ago, 18 goals this season. So he has been consistent, and that's a good thing, especially in a young player. But moving from the Bundesliga to the Premier League, that might be an issue. Like it would be with all of these players, but we have seen over the last few years, apart from Haaland and possibly Mamouche from Man City, the settling in process is a lot more difficult moving from the Bundesliga to the Premier League. So I think maybe Sesko's a bit too young as well to lead the line for a potential title-winning Arsenal side, whereas Gyökeres is a bit more experienced. He's held his own in the Champions League as well. Let's not forget that. And I think that he's just a better option than Sesko. Now, a player that I think that I put on the list here because he would be potentially signed on a free, and that is Jonathan David. I think that this player could be fantastic. He would be a great bit of smart business, but he shouldn't be the main target. In my personal opinion, Arsenal should go and get a Gyökeres and a Jonathan David. Not because Kai Havertz is a rubber striker, but you can never have too much firepower, in my personal opinion. So signing a player like Jonathan David, who can also be very versatile, can be deployed out wide or as a secondary striker, could be a great smart bit of business and transfer maneuverability from Andrea Berta and Arteta and just Arsenal in general. Now, 2 other players from Italy is Retegui as well as Vlahovic. 2 players that have been loosely linked in the past, with Vlahovic heavily linked 2 years ago, but those links have somewhat died out. And it also depends on what happens with the current Juventus manager Tudor and how the board see Vlahovic fitting in and how well he does between now and the end of the season, before I think that they'll make that decision to get rid of him in the summer or extend him and go from there. But as for Retegui, he's done quite well for Atalanta this season. I don't know if his form's fallen off. I haven't really kept up with what Atalanta are doing currently, but he could be a great, savvy bit of business that Atalanta could look to execute and Arsenal could look to bring in. And there you go, people. That is how I would go ahead and start a realistic Arsenal career mode with Andrea Berta and Mikel Arteta at the helm. If you have enjoyed this video, please don't forget to smash that like button down below, as well as subscribe if you are new to the channel. And if you're not keen on making such a commitment just yet, check out a few other videos. You might enjoy them, and then you can consider potentially making the long-term commitment to the Brom Squad Gaming channel. Of course, all are welcome on here. Let me know down below your thoughts and opinions on this video. Have I gotten anything right? Have I gotten anything wrong? What would you suggest that I potentially do, or what would you suggest that other people potentially actually do going forward for Arsenal, a realistic career mode. Don't come and tell me sign Kylian Mbappe because he's like Thierry Henry. That just doesn't fly. Anyways, speaking of Thierry Henry, I've got a video coming out on Patreon, the first video for Patreon, the Brom Squad Gaming Patreon, this weekend. If you would like to, especially if you're an Arsenal fan, I think you would be very interested in it. Consider signing up with the Patreon and all that good stuff. Anyways, until the next time, until the next one, I hope you have a smashing goddamn day, and I'm out of here. Peace.